Hi, welcome to Encasha Tech Videos. In this video, I will show you how to start writing tests in Angular 4. Slowly we will cover writing tests for model-driven forms and Angular's inbuilt validators. Finally, we will write tests for a custom validator in a model-driven form. This project is created using Angular CLI. It comes with default component, app component, and a spec around that component's implementation. So it uses Jasmine framework and the Karma test runner. Create a new component, write ngg, g for generate component, ngg component, and the name of the component that we are going to add. Let's say add product. Press enter. It comes with four new files: HTML, CSS, spec, and the component itself. It also modifies the app module, which just makes it aware that a new component is being added. This is the folder that has been created with the new files and the code that has come by default. This is the HTML with the default HTML in it, and now the spec, where we will see there are some specs already written in it, some tests. Let's delete all this code and write a fresh code so that we can go step by step about writing the unit tests. Let's start by writing describe. Describe is a function which takes a parameter, first parameter, as the name of the group of unit tests that we are going to write in the second parameter. So second parameter is a function which accepts all the test functions which are written using it function. So describe breaks your test suite into components, and it is where you perform your individual tests. Like we write our first simple test here to just verify if our component is defined or not. So let's start by declaring a component variable of type add product component, a component fixture which is nothing but a handle on the test environment surrounding the component that is being created. Next, we use a most important testing utility, that is testbed, which creates a testing module, and it simulates an app module of the actual application. It accepts almost similar metadata as app module, like declarations, and further we will also see the imports as well. It also accepts providers, etc. So let's assign values to these variables that we have declared, component and fixture. So fixture is nothing but testbed.create component. It's a value returned from the create component method of testbed static class, and the component is nothing but the component instance property of the fixture. Now we need to write a test to validate the component whether it's defined or not. So we write expect component dot to be defined. Also, we know that there is already a test existing, the default spec, app component spec. We need to ensure that only this spec is executed when we run ng test. So we append the describe, prepend the describe method with f to ensure that only this spec is executed. So it's run, and the browser is open. So let's check in the browser. So this is the output in the browser, displaying that the test is run successfully. Let's fail this test to see if it runs properly. to ensure that it doesn't return success in all cases. Let's say it has to be null, and verify it again in the browser. Okay, it fails, saying that there's an object and it is not null. So that's the basic test, and let's go back to our component to create a model driven form. So let's import the modules accordingly. The forms module, reactive forms module, the form builder, form group, and the validators, all from Angular Forms. Let's create the form by injecting the form builder in the constructor of this component. Also declare a form group at the component level. Now assign that form group with the builder.group, which takes an object. So let's add some controls, say product name. Let's add a validator, say the default validator be required, the name, price. Here also we'll add the required validator, and shipping, which will indicate the shipping charges. Here also we'll write the validators required attribute. That's it. So we have created the model driven form, and now we go back to our spec and write unit tests around those piece of code that we have written now. So let's first check the validity of the form. So we have added some validators. Let's first check whether the empty form is valid or not. Write the name of the test accordingly, and we can start writing the function. Before that, let's do some refactoring of the code over here. Let's add a before each call and move the block under that call so that this function will be executed before each unit test is executed. So let's move the testbed create configuration module and the variable assignment within this block. We also have to write the compile components call to the testbed static method. It ensures that the template and style sheets are compiled before the execution takes place. Let's add the necessary imports that we have added, forms module and reactive forms module. Just ensure that the namespace is imported in the top with the help of IntelliSense. Now let's check the output. Okay, so there is no problem with the new code added. The first test is running fine, the second will of course run fine. We haven't written anything in that. Let's add code to the second test. So let's first check the form validity without any inputs. So it's component.rform.valid. Let's check whether it's truthy. So it indicates whether the form is valid or not. Okay, so it has failed, saying it's not valid. Let's now pass this test by writing some inputs in the controls, so we can get hold of the controls by accessing the controls array of the form. So let's indicate item name, which will take hold of the name control from the forms. And set value of that control using the set value method. Let's add any name over here, say mobile. Similarly, add two more controls. We have to add the price and the shipping, so that all the validators are satisfied. So let's copy the same thing and repeat it for the two more controls. The price and shipping, so give the relevant values, and now check whether the test has passed or not. Okay, so the test has passed. Now let's go back to the component and add some more validators. So we'll still use the inbuilt validators. For name, let's add a min length validator. Say the minimum length of the product name must be 3. Similarly, add a validator for price. Say the minimum price validator, which should be, for example, 5,000. So the minimum price of a product should be 5,000, and the name length should be minimum 3. Also, we'll add the shipping validator for shipping. So here we can add the maximum shipping charges can be, say, 100. Now let's go back to our spec and start writing tests for these new validators. Of course, these are inbuilt validators and should function properly, but the point of writing tests over here is to just demonstrate the way we write tests for model driven forms, and it also serves a purpose, like when there are changes in the component core code, these tests will break if there is some deviation in the expected logic. So let's verify if the form is valid when price is less than 5,000. So just let's arrange first with the same values that we wrote above, and expect the item price value validation we have to write on the item price. So first we will check the form is valid or not. Next we also have to write another validation. Let's check it step by step. First the form, and then we'll check the control. So let's check the control of price, whether that is valid or not. So here we have set the price as 1000, so ideally this test should fail. Let's pass this validation now. So change the truthy to be falsy and set the value. So this test has passed now. Also, we need to check when the validation has failed, what is the reason of the validation failure. So we need to check the validation that has failed, whether it's required validation or it's the min price validation. So let's access the item price dot errors min value, whether it's defined, which indicates that min validation has failed. So let's run it again. So the test has passed. So in this way we ensure that a particular validation has failed. We can cross verify it, see if required validation has failed. No, that is that is not defined because we have already provided the validation, provided the value. So this way we can verify which validation has failed. Similarly, let's check the name validation, the min length, that it has to be greater than 3 characters, and change the validation to min length. That's it. Now let's run and verify whether the item name is less than 3 or not. So we have set it to 2 characters, so it has passed. Now let's say change it to 2-bit truthy. Now here we cannot use the errors attribute because we have set the value properly and there won't be any errors. So the test has passed. So this is how we have validated the name as well. Now let's check a custom validator. Before that we have to write a custom validator first. Say add a custom validator called price validator. Now export function in this class called price validator. It should accept a parameter called control abstract control type. Now what this validation should be for, let's check whether the price value is divisible by 10 or not. So this will be the custom validation that we are going to check. So let's return that it's an invalid price if it is not divisible by 10. So write the condition accordingly and return an object with a property, say invalid price, to be true. Now use this validator in the component in the model driven form where we have used the price. Add validator over here in this array, say price validator. It's imported at the top. Now let's go back to the spec and write a unit test for price validator. Copy the existing code for arranging the initial values and say whether the product price is divisible by 10 or not. Let's change the price to some value, say which is not divisible by 10. 555, no sorry, it should be greater than 5000, so 5555. Of course this fails, saying that it's not divisible by 10. Now let's check which validation has failed. Accessing the errors array, and invalid price is the attribute that we are going to check in the price validator. So let's check whether this is defined, which indicates that invalid price validator has failed. Let's set this to be falsy because the form is not valid. And run the test again. Now the test has passed, saying that it's invalid price that has failed. Let's change the price value to some divisible by 10 number. And set the valid values to be truthy. And this cannot be used because it contains errors property, which will be null. So we commented it out. And now check the test whether it passes. Okay, so it has passed now. Thanks for watching the video.